3 words for forest.
3 words for forest, a new verbatim play exploring uncertainty in a time of climate crisis. Recorded in the James Arnott Theatre, June 2024.
3 words for forest draws on interviews, some in person, some on Zoom, with 30 forestry specialists working across a diverse range of roles and locations.
The words you hear in 3 words for forest are taken from the interviews and presented by actors.
Questions that the interviewees responded to included:
how did you get into forestry?
What brings you joy in your work?
What are the risks, challenges and uncertainties facing you and the forests you work with?
How do you imagine the forests you work with in 10, 50, 100 plus years' time?
What are 3 words for forest?
Three words for forest. Trees. Wildlife. And air. Clean air.
Clean air, calmness and peacefulness, imagination of green.
Fluorescent green and dry, crunchy brown. Texture.
Trees, water and soil.
Roots growing towards moisture or nutrients in the soil. Light. Branches moving in the wind.
Noisy. Branches crashing around. Crackling undergrowth.
Getting lost in them.
Habitat, from a low level right up to the top of the mountains.
A pagan cathedral. Peace. Smell.
Wild. Complex. What would the third one be? Something either about age or size, I think. When you're in the forest, you're surrounded. You're inside something living. It's above you as well as you being above some other part of it. It's something you can explore. You can't see in all directions, but you can move through and find something new at every turn. That kind of sense, I guess.
Long term, productive, multi-purpose, maybe I would say, and timber.
Well, I was going to say lots of trees, but that's really stupid. But now I can't think of anything else. Lots of trees? No, but I mean, it's more than just trees, isn't it? I mean, you can find moss and other plants and insects and animals. It's a habitat, you know? It's a place. I'm an ecological geneticist, which kind of means I'm an ecologist and a geneticist.
I'm a forest geneticist.
We focus on trees mostly, though we do work on other plants, and we study genetics. So both at the DNA level, actually looking at molecular genetics, but also in terms of understanding how those genes are expressed as traits.
As a child, I wanted to work with plants.
In childhood, I was always interested in them and tried to work out what they were. And, well, I suppose that's kind of stuck with me. I still prefer to be outside, being in nature. And, well, I suppose we are dependent on each other. We need the trees.
We need the trees to breathe, you know.
Ah, yes, but do the trees need us?
They need light.
Benign weather conditions.
No massive storms.
The right amount of rainfall at the right time of year.
They need nutrients from the soil.
I think trees could perfectly easily do without humans. But I'm not sure that humans could do without trees, though. I'm interested in species diversity, so genetic diversity, connectivity. I look at plant DNA.
You can look at the DNA of any two individuals and still find differences between them. Even if they're family, they may be siblings, but there will still be slight differences between them.
Not every individual will be able to deal with all of the same things.
So if conditions change, the ones that are best suited to the site may change too.
And these are the ones that will survive and reproduce. That is the strength of natural selection, to bring about differentiation.
The flexibility comes in having lots of different individuals all able to deal with things in slightly different ways.
But there is another factor. How much gene flow in the form of pollen or seeds comes into the population from elsewhere?
You know, if you're a tree, you're fixed to the spot. You don't have the option of wandering off across the landscape if conditions change. You can't go off trying to find a mate. So you have to disperse far and wide. And that's what you see. Every spring in pollen is trees mating. Genes blowing off into the wind, finding another tree of the same species and producing offspring. The key is in allowing the best type to make its way through under its own steam. Ideally, you want something new being recruited every year, so that if conditions change, the climate is changing, then you would slowly, in principle, be seeing the population shift.
By stopping that, you're stopping the forests being able to manage themselves.
In many cases, that type of regeneration is not happening for a variety of reasons. One of the main reasons is that there's a huge number of deer.
Roe deer and red deer and
roe deer, red deer, fallow deer.
Tops of mountains devoid of trees.
Because of sheep and deer.
Grey squirrels.
Red deer and roe deer and red deer.
Muntjac.
They're hungry.
They have to eat something.
Herbivores.
Herbivores and deer and grey squirrels.
Browse out the regenerating seedlings, so you're left with just the standing, steadily aging population that will eventually just die.
So, until you can get the deer under control, regeneration is very difficult.
But then there's also all the pests and diseases.
There are risk registers for every conceivable pest or disease that might arrive.
Ash dieback.
Canker stain.
Ash dieback.
Bleeding canker of horse chestnut.
Ash dieback.
Or neonectria canker.
Phytophthora.
Conifer root and butt rot.
Phytophthora.
Red band needle blight.
Phytophthora.
Elbow patch crust disease.
Bark beetles.
Weevils.
Bark beetles.
Gall wasps.
Bark beetles.
Budworm pests.
Bark beetles.
Nematoda.
So many pests and diseases, all affecting different species of trees.
And those are only the ones that sound good.
Most aren't here yet, but they could arrive, so you know.
So it's very difficult to prepare for that unless you try to stop them coming in the first place.
How even the ones that are here now will react to changes in climate is uncertain.
The levels of management required in the woodlands is also uncertain. And what uses to put the trees and forests to is uncertain.
But what are the practical consequences of the things we find? How do we communicate what we find in our research in a way that's useful to people who are actually managing the trees?
We understand the genetics, and we're trying to demonstrate that within 1 or 2 generations, adaptation can happen. But there is an element of uncertainty to genetic adaptation. So, okay, they probably can adapt, but can they adapt quickly enough under climate change to survive? That is what we are working on now.
We're in a transition from we know what to do to we don't know what to do.
Climate change keeps moving the goalposts, while at the same time you're trying to make decisions.
With the rate of climate change, the urgency is greater than it was in the past. People can't wait 20, 30 years until we've come up with a definitive answer on what to plant.
I'm finding it very, very challenging. How on earth do we set the guidance right? Providing something that's actually useful for people, but at the same time get across the enormous uncertainty.
Different groups tend to have different interests. The different parts of the forestry spectrum, they shout from their own perspectives, rather than coming together.
Uncertainty is a real challenge. We don't know exactly what the climate of the future will be. If we did, we'd know exactly what to do.
The big step for us as woodland managers is to internalise, and it's not a very comfortable thing, but to internalise this understanding that we don't know.
I don't like uncertainty in my personal life. Yeah. Uncertainty makes me feel really uncomfortable. But it's quite, well, it's interesting if you think about it from an ecological point of view. Well, it's often the most unpredictable things that are the most interesting things. And I suppose that is true personally as well, actually. Yeah. I guess I think that uncertainty is ultimately quite productive, but it's scary.
Three words for forest. It's dark, it's quiet, and it's lonely.
Something wildwoody. An old hunting forest? A Sitka spruce plantation.
Commercial forests. Large scale.
A commercial forest. Access and wildlife.
I would say productive. A forest to me equates to forestry, which is about producing timber.
3 words for forest. Well, I'd use the word timber, and then I'd use the word people, and then I think I'd use the word environment, in that order. I'm a forester by background, an advisor.
I joined the Forestry Commission when I left school in 1960. And I worked my way up from being in the squad at 17 to head forester, chief forester. And then I moved to England and became area manager. And in 2005, I retired.
Forestry is the most amazing thing. Look at the climate change mitigation possibilities. Forestry hits every single button.
It feeds my family, it helps that anyway. It's my profession, my livelihood, forestry. Where I come from, it's either farming or forestry. I pick forestry. I'm a forest manager for a large estate, and I'm an area harvesting manager for a sawmilling company.
My favourite job of all was district forester harvesting. In charge of a very big programme. Getting out, actually being around the forest and doing things.
I still enjoy it. Being outdoors.
The freedom, the variety. No 2 days are ever the same. In amongst rutting stags, peregrine falcons, black-throated divers. I could spend all day on the hillside and never see another human being. I quite enjoyed that.
Every day's a different day. Every day is a school day. You learn something all the time.
In its early days, the Forestry Commission had an important social remit. Rural employment was a factor, forest villages. But then, in the mid-1980s, there was a major government reorganisation, and all that went. I had 30-odd men, and in one fell swoop, all bar 4 were made redundant. They amalgamated the forests into bigger areas, and so the head forester, the chief foresters, instead of being responsible for a forest area, we were given specific roles. My role was to be in charge of the planting of the trees. My colleague was in charge of the harvesting. From my perspective, that was a very retrograde step. I mean, for most of its life, the Forestry Commission wasn't messed around by politicians. But that changed. That changed with Maggie Thatcher.
As a youngster growing up, a lot of planting happened. I loved the whole covering hillsides in trees. People say you must be absolutely mad. Nobody says that, but I loved it.
People think that afforestation is a bad thing because it's just rows and rows and rows of Sitka spruce. But they're no looking long term.
The thing is, we, the UK, are the second largest importer of timber in the world.
We want our timber.
And we've got really good growing conditions for timber of construction quality.
But we're not allowed to cut this, or we're not allowed to plant trees here because it's no ecological, or for whatever reasons.
So only a tiny percentage of our timber goes into construction timber.
We off-market timber. We get it for a third world country because they'll sell it to us.
It's not right. What would future generations say if they knew we had us an 80% timber import requirement and yet we never planted trees to satisfy that need?
Ugh, you're just pushing the problems onto somebody else, if you think about it.
We cannot rely on other people to do our work.
But some of the things I did in the past, I'm embarrassed about. Like ploughing peatland. I mean, consider it this way. We weren't experts environmentally on the benefits of a peat bog. The CO2 problem, it wasn't even known then. We thought we were doing the right thing. That peat bog was dead. But that is hindsight. Of course it is, yeah.
Yeah. As a forester, you don't see your results until 40 years' time.
Oh, it's a long-term thing, forestry.
It takes generations.
We're just a speck of dust. Short-lived. Did we do the right thing or not?
What we're doing now, is it going to be okay in 50 years? 100 years from now? But don't know. We're trying now.
It's time. Do the trees have enough time to adjust at the rate of change we're inflicting on them?
We've already seen a 1-degree increase in temperature in recent decades. The thought of having a 4-degree increase is almost unthinkable. Just look at the big Cannock fire near Glenafric. That's 1,500 hectares worth of lost woodland, and it's not just woodland, it's everything. It's wildlife, it's everything there gone up in smoke.
Aye. Much hotter summers. And if the ground vegetation starts drying out, turning brown, oh, there is a risk.
Perhaps if we let them burn naturally, we wouldn't be getting fires as big as we're getting now, eh?
Some trees are fire adapted, but not all. And we're talking hot burns as well. I mean, you get a really hot summer burn, it just takes everything out.
Nobody. There's nobody on the spot anymore. It's all remote management now. It doesn't work.
Public perception's probably the biggest single threat. Whoever started the fires we've had in South Wales probably didn't realise the impact they were having. I mean, at the end of the day, it's us, actually. Lack of understanding, which is very concerning.
The biggest problem we have is managing people.
Politics. Decisions imposed on us. And then 5 years later, change the government. Poof. Oh.
How's it going to look in 100 years' time? Well, that's all down to genetics. That tree stands there for 100 years. It might actually decide to grow because the climate's changed enough to allow it to.
I think the importance of production will still be there in a few years, as it is today, and a good mix of species, but we know that there are a lot of species that are untested, that got great potential, and that probably we should be planting more of.
I try every year if the ground is ready, if we're in the right part doing the planting. I try a different species, a different seed source, a different something. Been trying it the last wee while just to see.
We've had assisted migration for thousands of years. All of humanity is based in assisting migration. All of agriculture is crops that have been created from things.
Genetic diversity is really important, allowing regeneration of the genetic stock that's here already. As soon as you start bringing seeds in from other areas, you start to lose those genetics that have been here for who knows how long.
And also, like, water usage. When you introduce a new species, it has many, many impacts downstream.
The challenge is to get the seed material, the right seed material.
If we were really serious about our native trees, the government should make sure they have seed stands in native species. You know, actually create areas for the production of seed.
I don't believe that we have the evidence to support the view that we should be growing only locally native species.
I'm personally very conflicted about the whole thing.
I don't believe that we have sufficient confidence in the future trajectory of climate and pests and pathogens to say we should only grow native species. We don't know. We simply don't know.
They are developing all these climate matching models.
But climate change seems to be going faster now. It's running hotter than the models think. On the other hand, the Atlantic currents might shut down and that might slow things down in northwest Europe.
Niche mapping gives us a false sense of security, because future climates are going to be completely different to any current climate. We're not talking about having the climate of Barcelona. We're talking about having our own new unique climate.
In terms of adapting to the new climate, you need genetic evolution. And this is fine for semi-natural woodland over very long timescales, where timber production isn't a key objective. If growth rates are important, you haven't got that luxury of time scale.
we have gone horribly wrong. This story that it's all about growth economics, there's a great paradox. Even though things are really urgent, we have to slow down. We have to stop what we're doing, stop and rethink forestry.
I'm sitting in a town which is south from the Baltic Sea coast, not far from Berlin. I'm a peatland manager for our state forest administration here. My daily business is to find dried out peatlands and to find ways and possibilities to get them wet again. Mainly the peatlands owned by my own organization, so by the federal state, but that is only half of the peatlands. The other half is in other properties, especially private owners, so it's quite hard to get them motivated to do something. You could say, well, landowners should be enthusiastic about us wanting to do something to keep back water in their areas. But reality is mostly they are very cautious and anxious and afraid that their areas are getting too wet, so they can't do normal agriculture or forestry on it. We are used to dry forestry and dry agriculture, and we've been used to it for, you can say, millenniums.
I live on a small 2-acre woodland. It was a conifer plantation and it was meant to be a cash crop for my late father-in-law. We are slowly transforming this monoculture Sitka spruce plantation into a mixed species permanent forest using continuous cover forestry management practices. We remove 25 to 30% of the trees every 3 to 5 years. It's not always the biggest trees, but it's the trees that will allow the most regeneration. I was excited when we did our first thinning. There was this thick layer of spongy needles and hardly any ground flora. And I was dubious that there would be any native trees regenerating on this little plot, but within about a year, they were there. All these little seedlings coming up. They were mostly little ash seedlings, and I was excited because I knew that the ash would support much more biodiversity. But it wasn't long before I heard a lot of talk about ash dieback. And it's an airborne disease, and it spread quickly throughout. I would see all these young, vibrant ash saplings just wilting. It was heartbreaking.
We have more and more catastrophe stands here, like hectares and hectares of spruces that die all at once due to the bark beetle in the end. And you have nothing under it, no broadleaf trees or any naturally regenerated trees. So you have like a clear cutting situation and you get all of this sun power directly on the ground, which makes it even worse to get something new there. We need to have natural regeneration, especially within the pine stands, yeah? We need birch and beech and oak. But sometimes we have areas where we have about 1,000 hectares of pines and no other tree species in there. So of course, there are situations where it is reasonable and necessary to do plantings to get the trees in the areas. And in the situations where we can't avoid planting, we should try maybe new tree species, provenances from Eastern Europe, for example. The amount of timber that we will be able to harvest annually or regularly will decrease because drought periods will become longer and we will have to more and more go away from cutting down stands as a whole.
We did underplant with rowan and birch. The rowan and some wild cherry and other types of cherry, well, they brought in a lot of birds, species that haven't been seen here before, like jays or great spotted woodpeckers. And more colour. We're starting to really see that now. In between the dark conifer, we're starting to see these glimmers of gold.
Trees need us. If we want to put trees in areas where traditionally they haven't grown, then we need to help them.
It's us that are the biggest threat. But we're also the only thing that can make the solution.
We do have a role in that, to look after them.
It's kind of a stewardship sort of a relationship.
That word, guardian, isn't quite right, but it's something like that.
An ambassador, making sure that their best interests are preserved.
An influencer, I suppose, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, certainly humans influence what trees are where and how they're grown.
I'm just a human who really likes trees. I care about them very much.
I've always loved trees.
I hug them if they're big.
They become part of our lives in a way that almost nothing else does. It's well, there's a relationship.
My relationship with the trees. Well, I like to think that the trees are what sustain and support me. And hopefully I'm doing that in return. Hopefully I'm doing right by the trees from their perspective, and hopefully they're not grumbling that I'm exploiting them by building my wooden house and putting wood in my log fire and selling the wood to make the money to buy the beer. My job is a forester in a community-owned forest, Scotland. I manage the community-owned land. We have a conifer plantation and some old native woodland, plus new woodland that a lot has been created in the last 10 years. We are planting 1 or 2 schemes a year, and that is another 100,000, 150,000 trees, something like that. And there is an incredible amount of natural regeneration of trees on the hillside, now that we've put the fence up and got the deer down. How did I get into this? Well, that was sacking the education system. I applied for a YTS scheme, you know, the youth training scheme. to get into forestry school, and oh, that was a great scheme for me. That really worked. And then he offered me a job, and I just learned pretty much everything on the job. What questions do I have? Oh, right, questions. Well, if we are planting native woodland and getting a native woodland planting grant, we have to provide seed certificates that show that the tree stock we are planting come from particular seed zones. But are these seed zones correct in terms of the change in climate? And should we actually be planting some non-native species, things that are currently deemed non-native, in a native mix? And are we smart enough to know how that will affect that scheme? And what does native mean anyway? What is native now wouldn't have been native many years ago, and what's native now won't be native in the future. So why have we got this rigid definition of what's native and what's not native? I mean, I think that nativeness will be less and less of a thing. It's not about nativeness, it's about what can fit into an ecosystem. But I don't think that we have enough knowledge yet to know what can fit into that system and what won't. So I don't know the answer to that. On a personal level, right? Well, I feel that, well, I can't do enough. I just can't go fast enough. And there is so much to achieve, more than I can manage. In 10 years' time, I would hope that the human community goes through a little evolutionary, what's the word, spike. In 50 years. Well, I would hope that in 50 years there's a well-established woodland culture, forest culture, habitat culture, whereby the significant part of the community is sustained by the habitat. And that might be eating the habitat or being paid to provide services, whatever it is. Surely within 50 years that model will be well established. A more circular economy based on the local habitat. And I know that it is easier to see that circularity, if there is such a word, happening in a place like this, rather than, say, in the city. And I think that we have a responsibility to demonstrate these processes, and then somebody else has got the difficult job of working out how to translate that into urban environments where most of the people live.
The underlying problem is inequality and environmental injustice, vulnerability to climate change, deprivation. I work for a tree planting initiative in a large region of Scotland. We plant trees in the urban and in the rural areas. In the urban areas, we're planting trees in streets, in parks and gardens, in any available spaces, really, in the places where people live.
I work for a community organisation in a large urban area in England. We do a lot of tree planting, lots of community engagement with community groups, schools, businesses, things like that. You're not just doing it for the climate or for the wildlife, it's very much a people thing as well. Some places just have nothing in terms of green space, or they've just got a tiny patch of grass, and even putting one tree in there can make such a big difference.
20% is considered the minimum level of tree canopy we're looking for in our cities for the kind of future that we're facing. We want to help communities be more resilient to the changes that we're all facing.
You know, you want to be able to help everyone, but unfortunately the funding just can't stretch to everywhere. So you have to think, is this school more worthy than this school? And you know, that's definitely for me the most difficult decision, because you'd like to be able to give one to everyone basically. So yeah, for me that's definitely the most difficult decision, having to say to someone, look, unfortunately we cannot help you out at this time. Yeah.
We need more boots on the ground. We need people working to come forward and identify opportunities for tree planting.
There's so much more that we could do if we had more capacity. Capacity means people. And, well, it's like with any species that if you want to increase the abundance of a species, then you have to develop the habitat. And in our case, that means housing and accommodation. I mean, the human system, it's so extractive and exploitative. I mean, it's a linear process where you dig something out the ground, you consume it, and then you throw it away. And it's obvious. We can't go on like that.
We need political will and leadership and resources to back up that political will. Oh, and we need land. And that can only be achieved by talking to landowners, or I suppose acquiring land, and that would take a lot of money.
Yeah, funding and finding the land to actually get the trees in the ground, that's definitely one of the biggest challenges. But also finding that link between your city centre, your suburbs, your rural areas. You've got to think about how those demographics are intertwined.
How would I say things in 10 years? We will see more trees planted in the city areas, but whether it will be significantly more.
We do unfortunately get a lot of vandalism on our trees. Sometimes you'll finish a planting and the tree will be ripped up and you'll think, right, I'll try that again. And you know, it's a cycle. Some people would love to see the tree outside their front door being cut down because there's bird poo on their car, or there's sap on their car, or they're not getting enough light in their living room.
In 50 years, our coastlines will be changing dramatically. We will see people having to retreat, and we're not just talking retreating locally. And if you think about the impact, well, that's just horrific to think about. I also think that we'll see a significant shift in the agricultural landscape, with newly planted woodlands being more productive and contributing more to the circular economy.
Me trying to be as optimistic as I can. I think we'll see more spaces within built-up areas, even if they're just the same size as this room, that people feel they own a little bit more, or whether they've helped to plant a tree there or they've helped with a patch of flower beds, just people enjoying it more, really. In 100 years, I'd like to think that some of the oak trees that we've planted will still be there, and they'll have a huge amount of acorns that'll be able to be spread across the north, even further by squirrels or birds or whatever. That from that little patch of trees, the acorns could be spread much, much further. Yeah. That'd be nice to think of.
I'm a scientist, a forest ecologist. Before I worked where I am now, I was working with the trees, particularly below ground. People are just about above ground, the trees, how they look. But there are lots of things happening below ground, which the trees also depend on. And interestingly now, it has taken so many years, but now it is becoming a trend, you know. I grew up in the rural areas in Kenya. My grandfather had a woodlot. We used to see it as a forest and would play in the forest there. And then I started just getting interested in it, you know. I would see the seedlings coming through the undergrowth and I just wondered, how is this happening? So it got into my system then, but it was just part of the system. The colonial government exploited the natural forests in Kenya. They introduced species like pine and ash because they wanted fast-growing trees because the native species were considered to be slow-growing, and they wanted timber. Sometimes you have fragments of the native forest left. The local communities depend on the products there, the fruits and the material for medicinal purposes and all kinds of things, including firewood and all that. So the native fragments face a lot of pressure. About 80% of the systems in Kenya are now in agroforestry base. In small holding farm systems, we're talking about 2 hectares, more or less, and your individuals are meeting your normal food security demands for your family and the rest in this system. So if now we're being asked to grow trees in this system, because that's the sequestration, the carbon sequestration policy, then you've got only limited space for food security. So this is a big challenge. This is the same personal land you're growing your food, you know, crops, you know. So is it going to pay to have that? And how long are the trees going to take to grow? 10, 20 years? You want your livelihood, you want to get income. So these are the sort of uncertainties and challenges where these policies just come in and don't look at.
I think the food system's the biggest system that underpins our society. So if you want to change our society for the better, the food system is the best system to use to do that.
Agriculture's got a big part to play, not just in lowering carbon footprint, but in creating localised food systems.
Our field kitchen helped feed people through COVID.
I think the big focus has to be on just transition. Creating policy for land has to empower the people on the land to do the right thing for the land, rather than creating a situation where, you know, there's winners and losers, because, you know, the policy doesn't cater for everybody. I'm an agroforester, an environmental scientist, a conservationist, a farmer, and also a bit of an activist. I run a livestock-based agroforestry project here in the west of Scotland.
My job title's Regenerative Farming Lead. If ever there was a job title that was going to give you imposter syndrome, it would be that one. We're an employee-owned organic farm in the south of England.
I grow willow. Mainly biomass willow in the south of England. And I also make cider from the apple trees here. Yeah, I sell the willow on to other people for planting stock, and also some buy it for fodder crops and flood risk mitigation, and some people for basketry as well.
I like the function that trees play in a system. So I like it when they add a value. That could be an obvious commercial value, like the value of timber or the value of apples, but I also like it when you see them delivering like a health, welfare benefit value, like helping protect dairy cows from extreme heat stress.
We have forestry paddocks here where we graze our Mangalitsa pigs. We keep the pigs in large groups, and what we want them to do is come on the land and cause a bit of destruction. And then we move them off quite quickly, and that awakens up your soil microbiology and your seed bank, and it allows a much more diverse pasture to come back up in place. We also have areas where we don't graze the pigs that we're keeping for different purposes, different habitats.
Some of the willow field I've been letting grow back into woodland. I mean, still planting some trees, but others I'm just letting them self-seed, you know, mainly from the hedgerows. There's oak, hazel, sycamore, lots of sycamore in the hedgerows.
Woodland creation was important here. There was no direct seed source for the trees to come back from.
It's exciting what's been happening on the field over the years. There's changes in animal wildlife and the plants that have been growing in between the trees, in between the willow and the self-seeded trees. I mean, some I'm managing what I need to manage, but other areas I'm just letting it do their own thing.
The first agroforestry field that we did was mainly apples, pears and elderflower. My little bit of it, which was hideously unsuccessful, was an exotic pepper. I think I have a particular affinity for trees that are less common. When I first arrived, it was being farmed conventionally and it had an arable crop in it. When we first put the agroforestry in, it was a really frosty day. The tractor subsoiled the rows in. You could just see this layer of white frost and brown diagonal lines as the tractor kind of drew the lines in. And then we put these tiny sticks in, little trees that you could barely see. And now they're a really visible, distinctive part of the landscape. It's really nice.
We've been having some very, very dry conditions down here, and some of the variety of willow have died back and are just dry remains. You can hear that. Listen to that.
That's one of the things that killed the exotic pepper, dry, hot springs.
Seasonal changes, it does make it tricky. Is it the right time to sow? Are we going to have that weird patch that we had this time last year? Should I get the cows out now? It's unpredictable. It's hard to plan ahead.
Sometimes it's not possible to know what the smoking gun is if a tree or a plant isn't doing well. Unless there's been no rain for 7 weeks, then you have a roughly good idea of what might be upsetting them.
And this is one of the big things about conservation grazing and adapting to changing extremes in weather and heat, right? The pigs create the wetlands, and then the trees take that and extend it down, yeah? So when we're getting extremes in rain, we're storing a lot more, yeah? And so the areas downstream from us, the cities and the towns, well, they're at less risk of flooding. And then, if we get extremes in heat, we're releasing the water more slowly. So our burns aren't running as dry.
In the shorter term scenario, agroforestry is looking pretty good. But changes in government or political decisions could significantly impact how popular agroforestry is going forward.
The willow used to go to France, used to go all over Europe, but I can't do that anymore. Basically because of Brexit. I mean, I'm always trying to create, to find new markets, but, well, if I gave up this business, I don't think anybody would take it over, to be honest. Oh, it's a very niche little business. It's not a huge money maker. Yeah, it's definitely an uncertain future.
It's tricky at the moment because a lot of views are quite polarised.
Oh, so many conflicting views you find.
I just don't think it creates a place for conversation. I think we all need to be more kind to one another if we're going to move forward.
What I hate to think is that we kind of inspired one of our suppliers to put trees on their land, and then if it doesn't work, then it might put them off doing it again. But, you know, part of me is like, maybe there's social asset in funding people in their learning failures, because most farm businesses can't afford to learn by failure, but actually that is how most of us learn. So if we can cushion them through that part of the process so that when they do fail, they're not put off doing it again because it's not set them back thousands of pounds, then maybe there's value in that.
If we can take and mitigate personal risk, then people can just try things. I think it's important that people just try things, try new things.
Experiment, you know, experimenting with different types of trees. I just acquired 20 pomegranates. Not a traditional UK crop, and you know, 20 is not a huge number, but trying them out of curiosity, see how they do. So, you know, I will still plant things like chestnuts, even though I know Phytophthora is a risk. I've actually read there's some evidence you can use coppicing to help manage the impacts of Phytophthora. But you know, ash and chestnut, things like that. If we stop planting them all together, then no resilience will ever be developed. There's no chance then of any tree kind of popping up that doesn't have a problem with Phytophthora if we just stop having them all together.
I think it's about young people with crazy ideas, like, I don't know, rotational mob grazing pigs on the land. Aye. Because I think a lot of people have got really good ideas and no access to land in order to enact them. And yes, it's not going to work in every case, but over time, if people come forward and show that they're doing good things and showing that they're doing good things, then people are going to be looking over the hedge, you know?
Everything we do is to some extent an experiment. We have to accept that.
We're going to have to make some mistakes, because if we're not making mistakes, then we're not trying enough different things. And that's really tricky. It's tricky for us as professionals to say, we've got to do a bunch of things, and some of them are going to be wrong, and we don't know which.
At the moment, I'm fairly new to my role as private forest manager. I have a site where the owners have said they don't want any chemical used on site, which to me is great, because I don't want to be using chemical really. But yeah, I think some older colleagues aren't used to that sort of approach. So we'll see. But I think there'll be more of it, and perhaps everyone will be obliged to do it at some point if policy changes.
Perhaps there's a different way of working. where we work in collaboration as a kind of research project.
Right now, we're in a cultural change in terms of people's view of forests. A lot of people are paying attention to forests more than ever before.
But things that go viral, or things that journalists want to cover, are very often negative news. Some kind of disaster, or some kind of scandal, or something that is reinforcing this concept that the forests should be untouched and nobody should cut any tree. And we should conserve the forests, but at the same time use them, because we need wood in our life and we've always needed it. We need to cut some trees, and at the same time, let's do it well. And that's not the kind of narrative that people like, and it's not simple. So anything that is not black and white is very difficult to convey and to sell to media.
The decisions that are being made by society and the pressure on politicians are very much, how can we make change now? How can we fix things now? It's urgent. It's an emergency. But forests don't change quickly. You have to put a lot of care into rapid changes.
In 100 years' time. Oh, that's hard to know, eh? And, well, you know, with climate change and pests and diseases and human interaction, it's just like a real big unknown. But I do think that some trees will adapt, actually.
100 years. I think some of the apple trees here could be beautiful, ancient, gnarled, lichen-covered, twisted trees that everyone loves. But 100 years. 4 to 6 degree increase in temperature. It's just a giant question mark, isn't it?
In 100 years? Well, I'm not going to be here, am I? But I hope a more diverse mix of people with different ideas take up shop in the woodland and maintain it. Because when you think about it, our biggest renewable resource as a species is creativity. It's amazing what people can do when they put their mind to it. And I think people will adapt.